My name is Emily, and I'm 29 years old. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. If you asked anyone in my family, they'd probably tell you I'm the glue that holds us together. The one who always knows what to say, who steps in to fix things when they start to fall apart. But I've learned that sometimes glue isn't enough to hold a family together when it starts to tear at the seams. Last Thanksgiving, I stood beside the dining table, the scent of roasted turkey wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I watched my family, each laugh and story shared around that table evoking nostalgia and comfort. Except, it was different for me. Beneath the laughter, I felt an ache, a longing for connection that never quite filled the space I inhabited. I was there but not really there, like a ghost hovering in the wings of a play where I was cast to be a supporting character in everyone else's drama. It was that same Thanksgiving a few years back that I sacrificed everything for my family. I was ready to spread my wings, escape to college, but my father's health took a nosedive. I spent most nights at the hospital, my dreams folding into the sterile scent of antiseptic and the hum of machines. I thought I was being strong, doing what love required, nurturing a bond that deserved everything I could give. I believed being the caretaker was my calling, that pouring myself into others would somehow fill that deep well of yearning growing inside me. But standing there, surrounded by relatives, hearing them tell stories that didn't include me, I realized I had become an afterthought. I wasn't a part of those vibrant narratives anymore. I was a shadow, cast aside like I never mattered. As the months rolled on, and the holiday decorations faded into the back of closets, betrayal seeped into my existence. I began to notice how my brother, Ryan, transformed under our mother's affections. Where I once saw a world of opportunity, I instead felt the walls closing in. The weight of my sacrifices started to unravel into whispers of inadequacy as the family spun tales that glorified him while casting me into the abyss. I sat across from them at the dinner table as they praised his every achievement while I was met with a cool indifference. I could almost hear the echo of my own inadequacies planting tiny seeds of resentment. The mother who had once understood the depth of my sacrifices now wielded that same guilt as a weapon against me. I'd try to remind her of everything I had done, the nights lost to worry, the dreams I shelved so she could breathe a little easier. "Mom, I began one evening, but she silenced me with a wave that felt like a door slamming shut. "You need to stop dwelling in the past, Emily. You should focus on being supportive. Ryan needs to feel like he's enough too." Those words cut deeper than any blade, struck raw nerves that ached whenever I replayed them in my mind. And that family photo, that ghastly image of our supposed unity, positioned just so on the piano, turned into a cruel reminder. A snapshot of a once joyful family was now a constant show of indifference, a decay of love. I started to resent that image. It felt more like a mockery than a memory. What was I doing? I found myself wishing to be free of their expectations, of their judgment that was as heavy as a physical weight. Then, through some stroke of cruel irony, my life twisted in a way I didn't see coming. After a year spiraling out of their shadow, I built a small event planning business, pouring every ounce of heartache into my work. I turned pain into swirls of color and elegant centerpieces, slowly learning to center my own narrative, one delicate bloom at a time. It was like I rediscovered myself buried beneath the rubble of family obligations, and it felt intoxicating to reclaim a part of my life that had been stripped away. Then came the call from Ryan. He wanted me to plan his wedding, a monumental day he claimed I could elevate with my expertise. Those same family members who had shunned my presence suddenly saw my talent as something to exploit. I wrestled with my emotions as I accepted the project, vowing not to be a cautionary tale but the proud architect of something beautiful. The day arrived, and I waited outside the venue, heart thrumming. I could hear laughter and the distant clink of glasses carried by the night winds. As I entered, the room radiated joy, a stark contrast to the shadows lurking within my heart. I walked through that venue, taking in the beautifully crafted designs, and for the first time in a long time felt powerful. When it was time to make my speech, I stood up to the microphone, the crowd's eyes drawn toward me like moths to a flame. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, letting the weight of the moment envelop me. "To the mother who called me unworthy and the brother who turned his back when I needed you most, I stand here because I chose to rise, not bend." The room fell into a stunned silence, confusion flickering on familiar faces. I could see their expressions shifting, laughter transformed into awkward discomfort. Gasps echoed around me as my words settled into the air. It was like a mirror reflecting their shock back to them, drawing out the truths they'd buried beneath their narratives. I had finally shifted the lens of their perception, not through violence or anger, but through authenticity. I was done being overlooked, cast aside. That evening, I felt a bittersweet release wash over me like a tide. I'd spent too long playing a supporting role, and finally I stepped into the light. With every attentive ear trained on me, I recognized that I wasn't invisible. They saw me, truly saw me for the first time. My heart ached for the love I once yearned for the bond I'd lost, but in that moment, I also felt a triumph that surpassed the joy of any celebration. They would remember this night not just for the vows exchanged or the songs sung. They would remember me as the woman who reclaimed her power with unyielding grace. I glanced around the room. Admiration mingled with guilt played on their faces. In that same space that had once felt so lonely and unmoving, I had shifted everything. I walked away that night with a heart both heavy and light. While the love I lost would remain an ache, I had taken the first step toward healing. I built my future with my own hands, with my own dreams. I wasn't merely the caregiver anymore. I was Emily, a woman who refused to be overlooked. I realized that some toasts are indeed meant to be swallowed with regret, but I was finally drinking from the cup of my own worth, and it was sweeter than I ever dared to imagine. They finally saw me, and I never had to scream.